Hi, everyone. Just getting set up here as usual. While we're waiting for everyone to come in here, I'm curious if any of you have tried spot prawns before. So let me know in the chat where you're tuning in from, and if you have or have not tried spot prawns yet. That's a good question to start today out. I've definitely tried them many times before because they're my favorite shrimp on the planet. So let's see. Also, I'm Kat, and I'll be hosting the event today from Brooklyn, New York. Hi, Denise. Yeah, the spot prawns are amazing. We're just gonna wait a few minutes until everyone gets into the room here. Okay, so a couple of you have not tried them yet. Well, you're in for a real treat if you do have them in your next box, because they're truly incredible. So yes, I've had a lot of shrimp, a lot of different kinds of shrimp too, but spot prawns are awesome. All right, let me click on all these buttons. William, need more practice. Yeah, they're very delicate. So, they're not hard to cook, but they're very different than the shrimp you've had before, probably. So, oh, nice, Denise. Hi, Andrew from Vegas. I've still yet to go to Vegas. I'm not a big casino person, I guess, but yeah, for those of you who are coming in, just waiting maybe another minute or so until we get more folks in the room. And if you want to just drop in the chat where you're tuning in from, and if you've tried spot prawns yet, I'm sure I'll go to Vegas at some point, Andrew, but we'll get there. I do like watching World Series of Poker, so I will never actually go sit at a poker table because it makes me too nervous, but all right, let's wait one more minute here. Oh, vacationing in Seattle, Terry, that sounds nice. I'm sure there's some spot prawns there too, since they're in the Pacific Northwest. Oh, hi, Claudia. We're very close to each other. Yes, they are the best shrimp that you've ever had. Not an exaggeration. So, well, I think we probably can go ahead and get started. It looks like we've got a nice little critical mass of people in the room here. So let me just reintroduce myself for folks who got in a little bit later than the rest of us. I'm Kat. I'm from the Wild Alaskan Company recipe team. And this week for our live event, I'm going to give shrimp and grits a ridiculously delicious Alaskan upgrade with spot prawns, which is the seafood of the week or of the few weeks. Before we get to cooking, just basic housekeeping. If you want captions to help you through this event, there's a button at the bottom of your screen that either says show captions or 3 dots that say more, and then it'll pull up a caption menu for you. So that'll help you follow along. And if you have any questions along the way about whatever I'm doing or anything related to wild-caught seafood, if you don't mind dropping it into the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen rather than the chat. Chat will still see the questions, but it'll be harder for us to field them. If you put them in the Q&A little button at the bottom of your screen, it'll be easier for me to get to them. And lastly, if you need to leave before today's event is over, don't worry, don't fret. We'll send a link in the next day or so. And also this event is being live streamed on Facebook, so it'll be available immediately after we finish here today. So you can always log into our Facebook homepage if you want to watch right away, for an encore presentation. So if I'm joined here by a few of my colleagues from Wild Alaskan Company, if they want to come onto screen and say hello. So they are going to be the folks who are helping me, answer your questions. These are my friends and colleagues. So you may have spoken to them or interacted with them at some point during your, Wild Alaskan journey. So hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. So, all right, let's get to the food. That's what we're all here for. What we are learning to make today, or what we're making today, I'm going to make a really, really easy recipe for what I'm calling Cajun spot prawns and cheesy grits. To really infuse this dish with the flavors of Alaska, we're going to utilize the spot prawn shells to actually make a quick stock that we'll use to simmer the grits. So it'll just give it that little extra prawny goodness throughout the entire meal, not just onto the prawns that'll be on top of the grits. So we'll drop a link into the chat for that so you can take a peek. Before I go any further, I have been informed that people have feelings about grits. And about how they should be cooked. They're very particular about this, and that is totally fine. Let me just say that I think that spot prawns and spot prawn stock can be used to give any grits recipe an Alaskan spin. So if you have a go-to grits recipe or a favorite or something that's been passed down, keep making it by all means, but I would suggest trying to make it with some spot prawn stock and putting some spot prawns on top and seeing how you like it. The grits recipe that I'm using today is relatively quick, so that you don't have to watch me stir grits for, an hour. But more importantly, it's very tasty, something that you can make just on a whim during the week, as long as you have some spot prawns in your freezer. So for those of you who are not familiar with spot prawns, they are some of the best shrimp you'll ever have. I know that sounds like an exaggeration, but they're seriously incredible. They're currently a member special that we've been offering for a very limited time. It's only the second time this year that we've offered them. So definitely do not miss out on them. They're sweet, buttery, they're almost lobster-like in their texture. They're not lobster size, but they're like very, very, they have like a very similar bite to them. And I said this last week, we had a spot prawn event as well, but they're a serious upgrade to like the average run-of-the-mill shrimp that you would get, at like a corner grocery store. So I don't have a pack of them with me right now because I forgot to bring one, but they come in 8-ounce packs, and this is here about 8 ounces of prawns. So that is about 2 servings worth of spot prawns for any meal. Let me just show you what those look like. They vary in size. Some of them are little on the smaller size, where it's sort of like the size of my pinky. The other ones are maybe more thumb sized. So they are a wild shrimp. So you'll have all different sizes. It's just whatever the ocean decided to give the fishermen, on that particular day. So if you didn't get a chance to join me last week, we took sort of a deep dive into how I like to prep them, how I like to thaw them. There's a recording up on YouTube for that. Where I share some great tips on like the easiest way to, do all the prep for that. So feel free to scroll through that at some point if you're needing a little bit of help. But in the meantime, for today, I've already peeled most of these, but I'll show you just really quickly what I typically do. And what I need is basically just a nice pair of kitchen shears and a prawn. So if you want to switch over, yes, thank you for switching to that camera. What I like to do is I like to snip them down the back. The shells are like a little more finicky than like the average shrimp shell. So you can peel them without doing this, but this exposes the vein if you want to clean it. There's really not ever any gunk in these. So it's more just to make my life easier and not spend forever peeling them. And just keep in mind that these are kind of spiny. So if you're going down the prawn, you're fine, but don't ever go up with your finger because you're going to get poked. But yeah, so just like that, I cut them down the backs, and then I sort of get my thumb in there and roll them right out. So that's the easiest way to do it. You're also totally able to do this without cutting them down the backs, and they'll look a little prettier afterward. I don't mind that they look a little funky because I, just want to eat some delicious food. That's all that matters. So let me just rinse my hand off. So what we need for this recipe is 8 ounces, which is a pack of spot prawns that are peeled. And the shells, I actually have the shells reserved right here. So these are all the shells from the prawns. Sometimes there's a little bit of roe attached to their bellies. I don't think I saw any on these, but you can go ahead and leave that on there if you do see any roe. These are going to be the ingredients that make this shrimp and grits dish, like very, very different than anything you've ever had, just way better in my subjective opinion. So those are the stars of the show. I also have a little bit of like Cajun seasoning that I put together from some like basic ingredients in my pantry. It's literally just onion powder, garlic powder, some smoked paprika, sugar, oregano, and a little bit of cayenne for heat. So if you also have some store-bought Cajun seasoning, you can use that too. Just keep in mind that, you know, that'll have some salt in it. So you can't control the flavor as much, but I just threw that together right before we set up for this event. Also have about half a diced onion. I kind of just save these little bits from the end of the onion. I'm going to throw that into the stock later to give it a little extra flavor. Got some cheese. I believe the recipe on the site says grated cheese, but you can have cheddar that's, you know, kind of just chopped up so that it melts really easily once you get it into the grits. Got a little bit of milk, a cup or so, and just some lemon that we're going to squeeze onto everything later. So let me, oh, and of course we've got butter. Butter is hiding underneath the cutting board here. And I do have parsley at the end that I will use to garnish everything. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to move this cutting board. First thing I'm going to do is actually, I have an electric kettle here, just something like this. You don't have to have an electric kettle, but I have about a cup of water in here. So in order to make the stock, I'm going to just do like a really quick shortcut for this and bring the stock to a boil in the kettle. And then I'm going to pour it over the shells so that the shells just will like steep basically. And like all these like little bits of prawn that are left in the shells and all the sugars, like some of those will steep out into the water. So if you're doing this, you want to keep them in like a heat safe bowl that you can just pour water over. If you want to do this, how I prefer to do it, if I have all the time in the world, is what I'll do is I'll put these into a pot with a little bit of olive oil. I'll fry them up till they're crispy and then I'll pour water over them. That'll really bring out a lot of the flavors that are in like the sugars in the shells, but this is a really quick way to do it and then it works very nicely. So once that water gets boiling, I will show you how to do that. In the meantime, I've got the prawns here and I'm just going to mix up this little Cajun seasoning with my finger here and dust these with the seasoning. Give them a little toss here in a moment and add some salt in here as well. Like that. So that should be just enough to coat them. This is going to give them so much flavor to enhance the flavor that is already in the prawns. And it's going to be a really, really delicious topping that contrasts with the creamy grits later. So I'm going to set these aside and give my hands a little rinse. All right, and my water is boiling, so let me go ahead and pour this over. Oh, I almost poured it over the cheese. And pour it over the prawns here. So the shells will start to change color, as you, I think, can see, because they're basically cooking right now, even as they're sitting here in this bowl. So it's a nice little transformation there. And I'm just going to set this to the side for the time being. Right. In the meantime, while those are like, they're not really simmering, they're just kind of steeping, I'm going to get this butter situation started. So that's about 2 tablespoons, maybe a little bit more. Once I get my pan on, I'm just going to have this over medium heat. Whenever you're cooking with butter, you want to make sure it's not higher than medium because it will burn. So you just want to get it hot enough so that it melts and gets a little bubbly. So get this one going here. To this, I'm going to add onions and they're going to cook for just a couple minutes until they get a little bit translucent. Ooh, I forgot I wanted to add these little like onion bits to the prawn and water. So some of that like oniony flavor will steep in there, and I can strain everything out later. So I know this might look like a lot of butter, but we're making shrimp and grits, so it's going to be nice and rich. If you prefer, what you can do is use extra virgin olive oil. It is going to change the flavor of the dish, but it still will be very, very delicious. So don't be afraid to swap it out. But I prefer to use a really good grass-fed butter. It will just add so much depth and creaminess to the final dish. So okay, that is looking nice and melty. Let me turn up my heat just a little bit. All right, onions are going to go in here, and you probably can't hear, but they're sizzling as soon as they hit the butter, and that's the perfect time to add anything. So you'll see it's nice and bubbly there around the surface, or around the edges. So let me just give this quick toss. All right, so while those are cooking, does anyone have any questions about anything while we're waiting for things to start coming together?
One question came up. Could we use ghee instead of a stick of butter?
Definitely. Ghee, if you're not familiar with ghee, you obviously are, whoever asked the question. It's essentially a clarified butter. So the fat is there, but a lot of the milk solids have been pulled out. So it's not going to burn like butter does. The milk solids are what burn. And it has a very similar flavor, like a little bit richer than something like oil, and it doesn't separate. Ghee is a great thing to cook with. I actually use it a lot when I'm making popcorn because I like that buttery flavor and I want to fry my popcorn in it, but I don't want to, burn butter. So definitely use ghee anytime there's butter. They're like completely interchangeable. Butter is not always interchangeable with ghee, but vice versa, like the other way around it is. So that would be a really good option to use here.
Great, thank you for the question. One other one, do you season those onions while they're cooking?
I do, and I forgot to, so thank you for asking that question. I'm going to season them up now with a little bit because I'm going to have salt on the prawns too. In the end, we'll give it a final test before we know if we want to add any more butter or not, or not butter, salt. So let's see. These are looking really delicious and smelling really buttery and sweet. Once actually, let me go ahead and get this started. I could probably go ahead and steep these for a few more minutes, but I see that the color has already changed. So I know there's some flavors in there. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and strain out these shells. For some reason, all I could find was a giant colander here, but I'm just going to use a colander to strain this out into another bowl. So I will show you what that looks like. So it was just water, and now it looks like a proper stock. So that is a really good indication that we've got lots of flavor that's going to go into the grits. Okay, so now that we have some stock going, what I'm going to do is, I forgot to show you this ingredient earlier. I just have a 1/4 cup of cornmeal, like really good quality stone ground cornmeal. If you're at a grocery store, like Bob's Red Mill is a really good option. If you have like a local option, that's always really nice too. So what I'm going to do is put this into my pot here, just like that. And it doesn't look like much. It's literally just a 1/4 cup of corn, like cornmeal, grits, polenta, whatever you want to call it. And then it's going to expand once it absorbs all of that delicious stock that we just made. All right, let me go ahead and pour this in. It might get a little lumpy, so it's a good idea to give that a little stir. And then we also have a cup of milk that we're going to pour in there too. All right. I'm really excited to get this going. Let me raise the heat a little bit. So you don't want to bring this to an absolute boil, but you want to get it nice and simmering. And then from there, the grits will absorb all of that delicious liquid. It's probably something I can turn the heat down on now. All right, let me see. What do I do next in this recipe? I need to whisk the grits, blah, blah, blah. Thanks for bearing with me here. It's a very simple dish to make. I'm going to transfer these onions. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to transfer the onions anywhere. What I'm going to do is add the prawns right into the center of this dish. And we're going to let these cook just for a couple minutes. Total. Depending on the size of the prawn, might need, 30 seconds more or less, but these should cook pretty quickly, actually. I would say they don't typically need more than 3 minutes in a pan. And if you're ever cooking with spot prawns, let's say in like a curry or chowder or soup, it's sort of the same amount of time. Like they'll need maybe 3 minutes or so to poach. And until they're just cooked through. If you like them a little underdone, you can always pull them a little earlier, but you'll notice that they start to curl into this sort of shape when they're getting hot, and that's a good sign. You don't want them to curl too much because that usually means they're overcooked. I don't know why this guy wanted to curl up so quickly, but I'm not going to worry about him. All right, let's get that all mixed up here now. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat on this because whatever heat is left in the pan is going to cook these through gently while I'm waiting for the grits to finish. So it smells so incredible, and you see all of that spice mix that I made. This like really, really simple seasoning is adding a lot of beautiful color to this meal. So there we go. That looks pretty good. And let's see, let's get this going here. Once the grits become a little bit thicker, what I'm going to do is stir in the cheddar, and that's just going to melt like right before we're serving it right at the end. All right. Any other questions, or we can just hang out in the meantime. If you have any thoughts on spot prawns or other seafood stuff that you want to chat about, probably need at least 5 minutes or so to hang out until the grits get a little thicker. We can just watch it in the background here.
What are some of the signs that you look for to make sure the grits are done? Can you kind of point that out as you're cooking on the left pan?
Sure. Well, first of all, you won't see this huge pool of liquid in here. So, at a certain point, grits can cook for so long. You can cook them so that they absorb a certain amount of liquid within like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. That is like a little bit too underdone, and it doesn't have this like creamy texture, but they'll absorb the liquid. You could keep adding more liquid and cook for 20, 30, 40, even like 50 minutes. And that's like where I think, a lot of these recipes that are passed down by people that people are obsessed with, like there's a reason, like all good things, you have to wait for them. So we're not going to cook it for 40 minutes today, but basically, it's I would say it's personal preference. So if you don't mind grits being a little bit on the nuttier side, just go with like your own palate. Sort of like I make Irish cut oats in the morning, and you just know they're done when you feel like they're a nice like thick texture, but it's creamy but not too chewy. So there's no like magical answer for it, just whatever you prefer. And I would even suggest like trying to cook grits for, finding a recipe where you're cooking them for 40 minutes and then seeing what the texture is like there, just so that you have something to compare it to versus something that's, needing a little bit less time, because, you might not know what you're missing out on. Again, today we're only cooking these for about maybe 10 minutes because that's all I have time for. Unless you have a lot of questions or spot prawn poetry you want to read me while we're hanging out here. So
I left my prawn poetry in the other room, but I wanted to look at some of the different sized spot prawns and just see how you're telling that they're done for some of the smaller ones versus some of the bigger ones.
sure. So the smaller ones, this is not too hot to touch. The smaller ones are like they turn into these little bite-sized babies. And like, I love when they're spoon-sized because that means I can probably eat like 1 or 2 at a time. It's curling up into that like C shape. That means that is done for sure. Some of these bigger ones, they need a little more time to cook. So this one is a little like flatter and hasn't fully become this like curled shape. And those are just like the proteins sort of pulling together as they cook and hit the heat. They end up contracting. So I would say that when you start to see these smaller ones turn into these C shapes, that's when you can probably turn off the heat, because whatever heat is left in the pan, that'll become this sort of like residual, gentle way to cook these. So this one like really curled up for some reason. I don't know why, but I think I'm gonna eat him while we're waiting here. So, and it's totally okay to eat the prawns while you're waiting for grits to cook. So it's really, really sweet, really succulent. All of those spices on there, like enhancing those, like the smokiness and the little like touch of heat, just like super tasty. The onions, I would say the onions are not integral to this dish, but I love onions. So adding them gives just like a little bit more sweetness and will add some really nice texture to the final dish. And it'll make it a little more saucy when you're spooning the spot prawns on top, which I always like things to be a little bit saucy. All right, these grits, I probably can turn the heat down a little bit. It's like a pretty aggressive bubble that's happening here, so. Right. Does anyone, maybe you want to drop in the chat, do you have a grits recipe that you cannot live without? I'm curious about this. If anyone has like a recipe that they think is the absolute finest, best one they've ever cooked with before. And I'm glad that you're all very forgiving and not the comment sections on any grits recipe I find to be some of the most entertaining comment sections, because you learn so much about how different regions prepare food and people's like very strong opinions on cooking them. So I think it's something that I really enjoy, because I don't have a history of cooking grits growing up, and it's, I guess, a relatively new discovery for me. Oh yes, the spot prawn and grits recipe. We can drop that in the link again, or in the chat again, but it's up on the blog. I don't know if you guys want to drop that in the chat for Barbara. Perfect. Thank you, Kristen. All right, so I'm going to keep stirring these grits so that they don't stick to the bottom of the pan, but we're getting closer to like a nice creamy texture here. Right now, it almost looks like tapioca, but as soon as this looks, more like sludgy in like a delicious way, I mean that in a very delicious way, that's when I'm gonna go ahead and plate this with the prawns on top. This is still a little bit too soupy, but what I can do in the meantime actually is prop up some parsley, because that's going to add like a little hit of fresh flavor to the meal. So I'm not going to do that on camera since I don't have any space right there, but I just have a couple sprigs from my yard or my balcony. I have a pot of parsley there. So I love being able to cook with herbs that I have on my balcony. All right, so I've just got a handful of parsley that we're gonna throw on top later. It smells so good. Oh, I wanted to show you, I don't know how many of you do this too, but every time I buy milk at the store, I have a hard time using the whole thing. So I end up pouring a lot of the milk into like a silicone ice cube tray that like it's like giant cubes where it's half a cup each. So I just use that to cook with because it's super convenient and I never have milk go bad then. So that's what I used to make the grits today, some frozen milk cubes. But that was a nice trick I learned many years ago that has saved me so much food waste because I literally would always get, you know, maybe halfway through or 3/4 of the way through a milk jug before having to toss it out. But the milk stays together really nicely when you're cooking. So I forgot I want to add some pepper to this. Give it a little extra heat. All right.
Anyone has any other questions, definitely ask them in the comments or in the Q&A. I did have a question come in about, you know, can you thaw the shrimp or those spot prawns in the package?
You can thaw the prawns in the package. What I would suggest though is, you know, almost all of the other, like all of the fish that you get in a Wild Alaskan Company box, you want to take it out of the package when it's vacuum sealed. But something like the spot prawns or snap and eat crab legs, those are not in vacuum sealed packaging. So you can always thaw them in the pack and thaw them safely that way. However, the pack for the spot prawns, it's like a special resealable bag. I think I have the bag here still. Oh yeah, here we go. It'll come in a bag that looks like this if you want to switch to the other camera, in case people want to take a closer look at this. So it comes in a pack like this. It's a resealable bag. You know, sometimes I actually like that it's resealable because if I don't use the spot prawn shells to make stock for that particular meal, I'll just throw the shells in here, stash it in the freezer until I'm actually ready to use them. But in any case, sometimes the plastic on this splits. So if you're gonna thaw them in the fridge, put them in a bowl first so that you don't get like defrosted prawn juice all over the shelf. The spot prawns are frozen right on the boat. So they're covered in like an ice glaze, and that preserves the freshness. They're basically frozen at the peak of freshness in this like slurry, just like a saltwater slurry. So all of that is going to still be on the prawns when you get them in the pack. Might get messy, so put them in a bowl is my suggestion.
Great. And do these spot prawns have any additives or preservatives?
No, the spot prawns that we offer are completely preservative free. The only preservation that occurs is the flash freezing on the boat. And there's no chemicals that are added to it to keep them plump. There's a really common chemical additive called sodium tripolyphosphate that is used in shellfish, STTP. And that can give shrimp or something like scallops like a very rubbery texture. And you'll notice that with the prawns that you're getting from Wild Alaskan, like there is no rubbery texture at all, unless you completely overcook them. But even then it's just tough and not rubbery. So that's like a big thing that I noticed. And that's why it feels more like lobster-like, I think, texturally. So yeah, they're just naturally delicious.
And could you quick thaw them under like cold or cool water?
Yes, 100%. That's usually how I thaw them. They thaw really quickly if you just put them in a bowl of cold water, and probably within like 15 or 20 minutes, they're going to be defrosted enough for you to get some scissors on them or peel them by hand. So that's a really that's one of the things I really like about them. They're just like so fast and easy to cook. So all right, I'm gonna go ahead and add in this cheese, the delicious cheddar, into this here, just to get this melted and cheesy. And this is gonna go on really low now, so I can melt the cheese very gently. So if I were to cook this for, another 20-30 minutes, this would get even more of like this luxurious texture. Right now just taste it. Right now it's delicious, but honestly, like they can absorb so much liquid and so much flavor. You can keep this going for, the entire afternoon, basically. The cheese is just melting right into there. It looks so good and smells so incredible. And now what I'm gonna do is plate this up. All right, so I'm just gonna spoon this into, and I have a nice wide bowl here for the grits, so they'll just have plenty of space to spread out. And this is like the best looking stuff in the world right now. The spot prawns, we put a heap of that on top here. So this is what I'm making now is 2 servings worth. So I'm gonna make sure I feed the rest of this to my friend here, who is not on camera. And then on top of that, let's add a little hit of lemon juice onto the prawns and do a little parsley. Actually, I love parsley. I'm gonna add some more there. So we've got a really delicious plate of spot prawns and grits. I don't know, I have this for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's a really delicious meal that is good any time of day. So let me give this a little taste here. I don't know why I got a fork. I'm gonna use the spoon instead of a fork. All right, so got delicious spoonful with that little tiny baby spot prawn that I saw earlier that I want to eat now. So, as always, very, very good. Really delicious. It took a while to get the grits to actually become the creamy texture, but otherwise, a very, very easy dish to make. Comes together pretty quickly, especially if you're cooking and just having a nice evening in, or brunch morning in, or luxurious lunch. This is a really, really delicious dish to have. So, oh, hi, Bernice. Thanks for coming in. Any questions about anything that I just did? Thanks for your patience in getting the grits to the right texture.
It really looks worth the wait. We had a question about lemon juice. Was there lemon juice in this recipe? And if not, could you use it?
Yes, I did put a little bit of a hit of lemon juice onto the prawns after they were finished, just before serving. You can do that right into the pan as well, but I just did it right into my bowl here. And it's not necessary, but I like that it gives a little bit of that acidity to balance out sort of that richness and creaminess and smokiness that is going on in this bowl right now. So good. I could eat this all day, but
I'm jealous. Okay, so I did want to mention we're going to be emailing out this recording afterwards. We did get a question about that. Another question, what else can you use the spot prawn stock for besides for this recipe?
So spot prawn stock, I will use it sometimes for things that have nothing to do with spot prawns. So if I'm making a seafood chowder, it can be a salmon chowder or something with wild Alaska pollock. Instead of using something like veggie stock or water to add liquid to the, finished chowder, what I'll do is I'll cook with spot prawn stock instead. And that adds just like a little bit of that depth of flavor. I feel like just like a little bit of it goes a long way. So something like chowder is great. If you do have, these like little ice cube trays that you want to like freeze some spot prawn stock in, having like a little cube of spot prawn stock, that is like a great thing to use to like build like a pan sauce. So, let's say you're searing some salmon and you want to make a salmon piccata, you can just throw in a cube of that. It'll like become a really, really delicious sauce. And And yeah, those are the main things I use them for. The shells will keep in the freezer, whether you've cooked them or not. And then the spot prawn stock itself, like once you've made it, discard the shells. The stock will stay good in the freezer for, up to 3 months, just like a typical shelf life of any stock. It's still good after that, but it's always great to use it within 3 months. So
I did a linguine del mare a couple weeks ago, and I used the spot prawn stock to boil my linguine, and it was really delicious. So I love having it.
that sounds delicious. Well, if there are no more questions, we can wrap this up. Just to reiterate, spot prawns are an exclusive member special that are available right now. We're currently offering them, I believe, for the next week or two. So make sure you add them, and you probably want to add more than you think you need in your next box. Those of you who know how good they are probably already doing that. Those of you who've never tried spot prawns before, you're really going to love them. They're just some of the best shrimp I've ever had. No exaggeration there. They've ruined me for other shrimp. So if you're not a member yet, though, we do have a special offer for you. If you become a member today, use the code LIVE25, that's LIVE25. You get $25 off your first box of amazing fish, and you get access to the member special like the one we're offering today. So join me again next week if you're available, on a Wednesday afternoon. I'm going to show you how to sear salmon from frozen. So that means zero planning ahead. You're just getting a fillet of salmon from the freezer onto the table in under 20 minutes. So it's the perfect recipe to have in your back pocket when you're short on time, but you're hungry like now. So thank you so much for your time. And yeah, if you have any questions, reach out to the member experience team after. And as always, live wild, everyone. Thanks.